Have you ever wondered how a business just knows what you're going to want next season? Or how a city can predict a traffic jam before it even starts? Well, that's not a crystal ball at work. It's data forecasting. Okay, let's dive into how we can use the data of the past to get a surprisingly clear look into the future.
So here's the game plan. We're going to walk through this step by step. First, we'll touch on why we even need data to begin with, then we'll climb something called the data analytics ladder to see exactly where forecasting fits in. After that, we'll get into what it really is, and then, the fun part, we'll see what a forecast actually looks like. We're even going to play with some what-if scenarios before we wrap up with a really important reality check.
You know, when you really think about it, almost every single decision we make, big or small, is just an attempt to deal with uncertainty.
So, the big question is, how do we make smarter choices? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. We reduce that uncertainty with data.
Just think about the last time you booked a flight. You'd never just pick one at random, right? Of course not. You instantly become a data analyst. You're comparing price, flight duration, the number of stopovers. Each one of those columns is a data point that helps you cut through the noise and make a solid, evidence-based choice. That right there is the power of data in action. Now, forecasting might seem like this huge, mysterious leap into the unknown, but it's actually just the top step of a very logical ladder. It's not about guessing, it's about building on what we already know. Let's take a look at the steps.
This whole journey really has 4 key steps. First, we have to look back with descriptive analytics to see, okay, what happened? Then we dig a little deeper with diagnostic analytics to figure out why did that happen. Once we understand that, and only then, can we start to look forward with predictive analytics, and that's where forecasting lives, to ask what will happen. And the final step, prescriptive, tells us what we should do about it. You see, you have to climb each step. You can't just jump to predicting the future without first understanding the past.
So, that brings us right to the heart of it. We've climbed the ladder to that predictive step. So let's get super clear and define what we're actually talking about here.
Forecasting is a really powerful type of predictive analytics. It's the disciplined process of taking all that historical data, running it through some statistical models to find patterns, and then using those patterns to project the most likely things to happen next. This isn't some wild guess. It's an educated, evidence-based projection.
In this quote right here, it just perfectly captures the golden rule. You can't just invent a forecast out of thin air. To have any real shot at predicting what's going to happen next year, you need solid data from the years before. Without that history, you have absolutely no basis to stand on. The past is the launch pad for the future. Simple as that.
All right, enough with the theory. What does a forecast actually look like? Let's see how we can turn all these numbers into a picture of what might be coming next.
So every good forecast starts with reality, with what has actually happened. You're looking at that historical data right here. This is our ground truth. It's the solid foundation we absolutely have to build before we can even think about predicting what's next.
And then this is where the magic happens. From that solid ground truth, the model generates the forecast itself. That dotted line you see is the projection of the most likely path forward. But you'll notice it's not just a single line, is it? A good forecast has to be honest about uncertainty, and that's why that path is surrounded by a whole range of possibilities. That shaded area has a name. It's called a confidence interval. You can think of it as a zone of probability. It's the forecaster's way of saying, hey, the real world is messy, so things could land anywhere in this zone. It's an honest way to show a prediction, giving you both the most likely outcome and the level of uncertainty around it. But what if we don't just want to passively see what the future might hold? What if we want to see how our own actions could actually change that future? Well, this is where forecasting goes from being a report to a powerful, interactive tool for planning. So, the kind of forecast we just looked at is what you might call an auto forecast. It's basically a passive prediction based on what's already happened. But a what-if forecast, now that's an active planning tool. It lets us plug in our own assumptions and goals, like, say, a new growth target, to see how our decisions could literally bend that future line. For example, what if our company's goal is 5% growth? We can plug that number right into the model, and it might spit out a target, something like this $4.6 billion. But what if we want to be more ambitious and aim for 7%? We just change the parameter, and boom, the model instantly calculates a new, higher number. This turns the forecast into a dynamic sandbox where you can test out different scenarios and build real strategies. Okay, now before we finish up, we really need a quick dose of reality.
As incredibly powerful as forecasting is, it is absolutely essential to remember what it is and what it isn't. It's a tool for navigating, not a crystal ball that shows you a guaranteed future.
A forecast is built on the patterns of the past. That means it can't predict things that have never happened before in the data. Think about it: a sudden economic crash, a huge hurricane that disrupts supply chains, a brand new government policy, a global pandemic. These are massive external shocks. A forecast can't see them coming. And that's where human judgment, experience, and strategic thinking are absolutely crucial to using the forecast wisely.
And that really brings us to the final, most important thought. A forecast shows you where the data is pointing. It's a map showing you the most likely path if everything just keeps going as it has. But the real question, the one that strategy is all about, is this: now that you know where the current is taking you, where do you want to go?